I shouldn't be telling you this, but once you know, you'll never look at SpongeBob the same way again. That's not exaggeration or some cheap scare tactic. I mean it. There's a line in the sand between people who've seen what I've seen and people who still get to laugh at goofy yellow sponges and jellyfishing songs. I was on the safe side of that line once. Now I'm not. And if you keep listening, you won't be either. I stumbled across something I was never supposed to. Not an internet rumor, not a creepypasta passed around for clicks, no. This was real. A lost episode. One Nickelodeon buried so deep you were never meant to even know it existed. And if you did, well, you'd understand why they'd do everything in their power to erase it. I can't get the images out of my head. I've tried drinking, staying up until exhaustion, even scratching my arms raw just to distract myself. But the moment my eyes close, I see it again. His face. That twisted parody of a smile, the way the colors blend. Like the tape itself was sick. It's not just a cartoon. It's not just ink and paint and frames spliced together. It felt alive. It felt aware. The worst part, it didn't just end when I stopped watching. It followed me. In dreams, in background noises that don't belong in my apartment, in the faint echo of a laugh that wasn't supposed to be real. I'm telling you this because you deserve to know. Because if you've ever loved that show, if you've ever hummed the theme song absent-mindedly while flipping through channels, you should understand the danger hiding under the nostalgia. Nickelodeon buried it for a reason. I know that now. But when I pressed play, I didn't. I thought it was just some quirky collectible. Maybe a scrapped pilot or a rough cut. I thought I'd be laughing about it later. Posting screenshots, joking with friends about cursed SpongeBob footage. I had no idea. I don't even want to describe the worst of it yet. You wouldn't believe me. And honestly, I'm not sure I believe myself. But you need to understand how it started. How something so ordinary spiraled into the ugliest thing I've ever witnessed. And it all began so simply, so harmlessly, that I almost laughed at myself for feeling unsettled. Almost. Let me explain how I even found the tape in the first place. I grew up with SpongeBob. Maybe you did too. Saturday mornings meant a bowl of overly sweet cereal, the glow of the TV, and that familiar voice asking if I was ready. I didn't care about the bad animation in the older episodes or the recycled backgrounds. It was safe, bright, harmless, the kind of show adults mocked, but kids like me clung to like a secret language. Even now, I can still remember certain episodes beat for beat. SpongeBob failing his driver's test for the 10th time. Patrick stuck under a rock, babbling nonsense. Squidward hating his life in a way that, as a kid, felt funny. But as an adult, feels a little too close to home. That's the thing about nostalgia. It tricks you into thinking the past was softer, better, untouched by the weight you carry now. But nostalgia also blinds you. It makes you forget that what you see isn't the whole story. It convinces you that a massive corporation like Nickelodeon was just about goofy laughs and sea shanties, not billion-dollar profit margins. And the kind of secrets that never see daylight. I didn't realize that until it was too late. I wasn't hunting for lost media. I wasn't chasing some conspiracy about hidden tapes. Honestly, I'd just stopped into a thrift shop on my way home from work. The kind of place where dust seems permanent, where every shelf holds someone else's forgotten junk. I picked up the tape on instinct, a plain, unmarked VHS. No label, no stickers, nothing but a faint indentation on the side where a label used to be. If you've ever handled old tapes, you know that weight, that almost magnetic pull of plastic in your hand. The cashier didn't even bother looking at it, just rang it up for 50 cents and shoved it into a bag. If she knew what it was, she didn't show it, but that's the moment everything started casual. Throwaway, nothing worth remembering. Until I got home. Some people will probably ask why I even had a VCR to play it. Truth is, I'd kept mine for years, shoved in the back of a closet, because part of me liked the ritual of rewinding tapes, the clunky hum of gears. Nostalgia again. Funny how the same instinct that made me keep that machine is the one that betrayed me. When I slid the tape into the VCR, it didn't start with commercials or statics, no. It went straight into the episode. No title card, no copyright text, just black. Then the faint hum of music I recognized immediately, even if something about it was off. Looking back, I should have known better. There are whispers online about exemplars smuggling out copies of things never meant for public eyes, animation tests, unapproved storyboards, even joke reels too disturbing to air. People talk about lost Nickelodeon archives like they're an urban legend, but those legends always have roots. If I'd done the research first, maybe I would. Hesitated. Maybe I would have believed the stories about tapes locked away in vaults. Tapes so damaging they'd rather erase them than admit they were real. But in that moment, none of that crossed my mind. It was just me, the tape, in a kind of childish excitement. I thought I'd found something funny, something cool to brag about online. That is, the cruel trick of nostalgia. Again, it sets you up with comfort before pulling the floor out from under you. Because when the screen flickered to life, I saw something I'd never forget. Something that looked like SpongeBob but wasn't. Not really. But when I played it, the opening felt wrong. The first notes of the theme song hit me like muscle memory. That familiar twang, the cheery voice asking, "Are you ready, kids?" But it wasn't right. The pitch was just a little too low. like whoever recorded it had slowed the tape by half a beat. The voice itself sounded tired, strained, as though the actor had been forced to repeat the line until the joy had bled out of it, and when the children's chorus answered well, they didn't answer, or rather, they did, but it wasn't the sharp, enthusiastic Captain, I remembered. It was muffled, distant, like it had been recorded in a cavern. The voices echoed strangely, dragging on, their timing slightly mismatched. I felt my skin crawl even as I tried to laugh it off. Maybe it was just tape degradation. VHS did that sometimes, right? Then came the visuals. The opening, the underwater pirate painting, the ship, the waving flag. But here, the colors were muted. The water looked gray instead of blue, and the pirate's eyes seemed sunken, darker than I remembered. His mouth moved to sing, but it was just a fraction too slow, the words lagging behind like a poorly dubbed video. By the time SpongeBob's pineapple appeared, I was already uneasy. The colors didn't pop, they bled. The house wasn't cheerful. It looked weathered, chipped, as if years of neglect had rotted it from the inside. And then SpongeBob himself popped onto screen. Except he didn't smile. Not at all. His eyes were wide, unblinking, and his mouth hung slightly open, like he'd forgotten how to perform the act of happiness. That silence, that frozen cheerlessness, unnerved me more than if he'd screamed. I remember leaning forward, telling myself it was a fluke, that maybe this was some unaired test cut. But when Squidward entered the frame, my stomach turned. His clarinet drooped at his side, and his eyes had deep shadows beneath them. He didn't look annoyed in the funny way I remembered. He looked exhausted, beaten down. The lines on his face were sharper, almost human, and his breathing was audible. Not comical sighs, but genuine, weary inhales and exhales. Patrick wandered in next, but his laugh dragged on too long. It started normally, then stretched into something like static, like the tape couldn't process the sound properly. His mouth opened wider than it should have, jaw unhinging slightly, and his eyes twitched in different directions. I actually paused the tape then, just sat there in silence, staring at the warped, frozen image on my TV screen. I told myself I was being dramatic, that it was just bad quality control, maybe even a parody reel. But deep down, something cold twisted in my stomach, something primal. I almost turned it off. God, I wish I had, but I didn't. Instead, I pressed play again. The plot started like any other episode. SpongeBob woke up late for work. He ran through his morning routine, but everything was just slightly off. The alarm clock rang, but it kept ringing, even after SpongeBob smashed it. His toothbrush scraped against his teeth with this grating metallic sound. The kitchen was darker than it should have been. Shadows creeping across the walls even though there was no source. And the dialogue. It didn't sound scripted. SpongeBob muttered things under his breath I couldn't fully catch. Squidward answered him with words that didn't fit, like mismatched pieces from two different puzzles. Even Mr. Krabs, when he finally appeared, had a voice that quavered between jovial and threatening, the laughter cracking like glass under pressure. It was all close enough to normal that I kept waiting for it to settle, for the cartoon comfort I remembered to return. But it never did. Every second felt like a performance breaking apart, like the characters themselves were exhausted by pretending to be cheerful for so long. And in that crumbling performance, there was something raw, something exposed, something I was never meant to see. I kept telling myself it was fine, that I was imagining it, that maybe I was just tired, but my palms were sweating, and my chest was tight, and some stubborn part of me whispered, "No, this isn't right." And I was right, because that was nothing compared to what came next. At first, I thought maybe the tape was just broken. Distorted sound, faded colors that could be explained. But as the episode went on, the wrongness stopped feeling technical and started feeling intentional, like the animators had designed it to make me uncomfortable. SpongeBob barely spoke. That alone was during he's supposed to be relentless, bursting with energy, cracking jokes, squealing over jellyfishing. But here, he shuffled through the Krusty Krab like a ghost. His eyes stayed wide, bloodshot, pupils too small. When he did talk, his voice came out low, flat, like the joy had been wrung from him. And Squidward got. Squidward, he became the target. The scene stretched on unnaturally long, longer than any gag should have lasted. Customers pointed at him, mocking his clarinet playing. Their mouths moved in sync, chanting insults that didn't even sound like words, just garbled syllables on loop. His face twitched with each jeer, eyes watering, clarinet squealing off-key, as if even the instrument was in pain. Patrick was there, too, of course. He laughed, and laughed, and laughed, not in bursts, but as a single unbroken stream, like someone had taken one of his chuckles and dragged it across minutes of footage. His mouth stretched wider, his belly jiggled rhythmically, and his eyes weren't even focused on they were locked forward, staring through the screen at me. I paused it again, rewound, played it back. Every time Patrick's gaze followed, I told myself it was coincidence, a trick of animation cycles. But my skin prickled every time those unfocused eyes landed on mine. And the backgrounds, that's what knotted me the most. They weren't stable. 1 second, the Krusty Krab looked as it always did, greasy floors, wooden beams, faded nautical. Then, in a blink, the angles would shift. The walls stretched farther apart than they should have, or the ceiling dipped lower, making the characters seem cramped, shadows bent in directions that didn't line up with the light sources. The kind of details no kid would ever notice, but once I did, I couldn't unsee them. I started rewinding constantly, frame by frame, and that's when I saw them, hidden flashes. A single frame where SpongeBob's face wasn't his face, his eyes black pits, teeth jagged, skin sagging. Another flash where the customers' mouths opened too wide, revealing tongues that split down the middle like snakes. They lasted less than a second, but I knew they were there. I couldn't have imagined them, or could I? That's what scared me most, the doubt. Every time I paused, my brain screamed at me that I'd gone too far down the rabbit hole, that I was seeing shapes in static, But the more I looked, the more I saw. The laughter never stopped. Background characters chuckled even when nothing was happening. The audio track was layered with it, so much so that it started to sound mechanical. A loop. Except the longer it went on, the less it resembled laughter at all. It warped into shrill screeches, coughs, even sobs. I pressed my hands over my ears, but it didn't help. I still heard it. At one point, SpongeBob finally looked at Squidward and he smiled. Not the goofy, buck-toothed grin we all know. No, this smile stretched too wide, too forced. His cheeks tore slightly at the corners, red seeping through yellow. He didn't blink as he held it. Even as Squidward's clarinet squealed in agony and the crowd's garbled chanting grew louder, I remember whispering aloud to myself, "What the hell is this?" My voice sounded foreign. The room felt colder. There was another flash too quick, but I caught it. A frame of text? White letters on a black background. Only one word. Watch. I rewound. Played it again. Same frame, same word. That was no accident. That was deliberate. My stomach nodded. I should have stopped. Any sane person would have stopped, but I couldn't. I had to see where it was going, even though I already knew deep down it was heading nowhere good. The pacing slowed to a crawl. Entire minutes of Squidward's face in close-up, his eyes redder each time, his clarinet squeaking weaker. The background characters, mouths moving soundlessly now, laughter still echoing from nowhere. Patrick's endless chuckle still droned, pitch dropping lower and lower until it was almost a growl. I shifted on the couch, restless, skin crawling, hands clammy. I told myself it was just a cartoon. Just lines and colors. But it felt like more. It felt like I was being tested, like someone on the other end of that tape was waiting to see how long I'd last before breaking. And then, just as suddenly as it began, the sound dropped out completely. The screen showed SpongeBob, Squidward, Patrick, and a restaurant full of silent, unmoving customers. Not a breath, not a laugh, not a sound, and then the laughter stopped. The silence lasted too long. Not comedic silency kind cartoons use for awkward gags. No, this was suffocating. The absence of sound pressed against my eardrums until I swore I could hear my own blood moving. I leaned closer to the screen, waiting for something, anything, to happen. And when it did, I almost wished the silence had lasted forever. The camera cut to Squidward. He was center frame, clarinet dangling uselessly at his side. His chest rose and fell with shallow, uneven breaths. At first glance, he just looked tired, defeated, but the longer the camera lingered, the more the details gnawed at me. His skin had an unhealthy pallor, a grayish tint, like flesh left too long in stagnant water. His eyes were bloodshot, lids trembling as if struggling to stay open. Then, a jump cut. Closer now. His face filled most of the screen. The whites of his eyes were no longer white, they'd taken on a faint yellow stain, veins crawling outward like cracks in glass. Another cut. Closer still, the bags under his eyes sagged, deep purple, almost bruised. His mouth quivered. He didn't speak, didn't move, just stared forward as though something beyond the screen had broken him completely. The cuts came faster, each one zooming in closer than the last. Every frame more grotesque, more wrong. His skin darkened, mottled with blotches like rot. The texture sharpened unnaturally, far more detailed than any frame of SpongeBob should have been. Pores, wrinkles, tiny cracks around his beak-like mouth. Details no animator would bother with in a children's show. And then came the sound. At first, it was faint, a low hum, like wind rushing through a tunnel. Then it grew distorting, layering on itself until it was less like wind and more like screaming muffled underwater. I turned the volume down, then muted it entirely. Didn't matter. The sound was still there. In my head. Squidward's eyes began to change. The irises shrank, pupils dilating unnaturally wide. I could swear they throbbed, pulsing in and out like a heartbeat. His lips pulled back slowly, too slowly, into something between a grimace and a grin. His teeth were uneven, cracked, yellowed. Not the goofy book teeth of SpongeBob's smile, no. These were human teeth, wrong in his mouth. And then just for a single frame his face wasn't his face. I flinched back from the screen. It had been replaced by something raw, skinless, all tendons and sockets and gaping cavities. But it was so quick, so fleeting, that when I rewound, it was gone. Just Squidward again, rotting in close-up. I wanted to believe I'd imagined it, that my brain had filled in something that wasn't there. But deep down, I knew better. I'd seen it. Even if the tape refused to show me again, I had seen it. The sound rose again, no longer muffled screaming, but crystal clear sobbing. Loud, guttural sobbing, as if Squidward himself was crying directly into my ears. It was too real, too human. I turned off the volume completely, checked my speakers, even unplugged them, but the sobbing continued. The sequence dragged on. 5 minutes. 10. I lost track. Just endless cuts of Squidward's face, each one worse than the last. His eyes now bled freely, red rivers streaking down his cheeks. His mouth twitched in silent spasms. His tentacles, barely visible at the frame's edges, curled tightly. Nails or what looked like nails digging into his own skin. If you've heard whispers about Red Mist Squidward, maybe you think you know what I saw. But this was worse. That story was just a rumor, a piece of online fiction. This was alive, breathing, watching me as much as I was watching it. At one point, the background behind him flickered. For just a second, I thought I saw faces there, dozens of them, pale and screaming, their mouths open in impossible shapes. The next second, gone. But the impression lingered, burned into my vision. I whispered again this time, not in curiosity, but in fear. What is this? My voice trembled, and then came the first true break. The screen cut to black. For a heartbeat, I thought it was over. But then the blackness split with a flash of white text. Do you see him? I froze. My skin crawled. I wanted to eject the tape, to snap it in half, to burn it, but I couldn't move. The episode returned, back to now. His sobbing synced perfectly with the distorted audio track, his mouth opening and closing in jerky, unnatural spasms. His eyes were gone, just hollow sockets, dark and wet, staring into nothing. And then the screaming faces returned, not in the background this time, but spliced into the footage itself. Full screen flashes of faces I didn't recognize, human faces, twisted in agony, mouths stretched far beyond what should be possible. They screamed without sound, but I felt it vibrate in my bones. I can't describe what their eyes looked like. I don't want to. My brain refuses to hold the image for long, and maybe that's mercy. But you'll imagine it anyway, won't you? That's the curse of it. The sequence built faster now. Cuts every half second, each one worse, each one more grotesque. Squidward tearing at his own skin, the hollow sockets gushing, the background melting into red static. The flashes of those otherworldly faces growing more frequent, more violent. I covered my eyes once, just once, but I swear I still saw it, like the tape had burned through my eyelids, forcing itself into my skull. I don't know how long it went on. Could have been minutes, could have been hours. I was trembling, heart pounding, palms slick with sweat. My body screamed at me to stop, but my hands stayed frozen. I couldn't look away. And then, just as it peaked, just as the screams and sobs and faces blended into one unbearable crescendo silence, stillness. Squidward, alone again, slumped, head bowed, breathing shallowed. It was over, or so I thought. But the ending broke me. When Squidward finally went still, I exhaled. I hadn't realized I'd been holding my breath for what felt like an eternity. His body slumped against the frame, head drooping, the color drained from him until he was almost unrecognizable. My heart pounded, my hands shook, but part of me whispered that maybe, just maybe, it was over. I was wrong. The screen cut to black again. No credits, no fade out, just emptiness. But this time, it didn't stay silent. A faint gurgling sound crept in, like water rushing through pipes, echoing as if it came from deep underwater. I leaned closer, trying to make sense of it. Then a voice joined in, soft, distorted, but unmistakably familiar. SpongeBob, why are you still here? It wasn't high-pitched or goofy. It was deeper, stretched, as though dragged across a rusted tape head. The sound carried weight, contempt. I froze. The blackness dissolved back into the show, but something was off. SpongeBob stood in the middle of the Krusty Krab, alone. The colors were drained, his outline darker, almost oily. He didn't blink. He just stared straight ahead, straight at me. You shouldn't be watching this, he said. His mouth didn't sync with the words. The voice arrived a half-second too late, like a bad dub, and yet the message hit perfectly. Behind him, shadows writhed. They stretched across the floor like liquid, pulling at the edges of the frame. The tables and chairs dissolved into the background until there was nothing left but SpongeBob and that spreading dark. "You belong under the sea with us," he whispered. I fumbled for the remote, tried to stop the tape, but the buttons didn't respond. Pause, eject, power, none of them worked. The screen flickered, static biting at the corners, but the episode pressed on as if the tape had claimed control. Patrick appeared next, stepping from the shadows. His mouth hung open, still laughing, but this time no sound came out. His chest convulsed with the effort, eyes locked not on SpongeBob, but on me. He pointed forward, his arm stiff, accusing. Mr. Krabs stumbled into frame, claw twitching, muttering nonsense. The words were garbled, reversed, but every so often I caught fragments. "Don't tell them. They'll never believe you." Too late. I felt my skin crawl. This wasn't a cartoon anymore. It was a message, a performance meant for someone specific. Me. SpongeBob leaned closer to the camera. His face filled the screen, eyes wider than ever, pupils shrinking into pip. The static bled into his voice, making it grind and rasp. "You saw him. Now he sees you." I jolted back, my heart pounding in my throat. And then came the images. Not animation, not drawings, but real photographs spliced into the reel. For a split second, I saw what looked like a hospital room, a corridor, a figure standing at the end, blurred but facing the camera. Then another flash something, underwater, shapes distorted by the current, then darkness. Darkness. Again, I rewound instinctively, desperate to confirm what I'd seen. But when I played it back, those images weren't there anymore. Just SpongeBob's face, closer now, pixelated and breaking apart like the tape itself was rotting. "Keep watching," he crooned. "You don't stop here. You don't get to." I don't know why, but I obeyed. The screen began to pulse, flickering between SpongeBob's distorted grin and static. Each pulse quickened, synced with my heartbeat until I couldn't tell if it was the tape or me. I felt dizzy, nauseous, like the room itself tilted, and then silenced again. Static. I thought maybe that was the end, but slowly, an image bled through. At first, it was too faint to make out. Just a shadow, grainy and unclear. But as the static cleared, the shape sharpened into something undeniable. It was Squidward. Or what was left of him. His body lay sprawled, tentacles twisted at unnatural angles, eyes hollow, mouth torn wide in a scream that would never end. But the background wasn't the Krusty Krab anymore. It was my living room. My couch, my walls. I swear to I swear. Final frame of that tape was Squidward's corpse, lying in my home. And then it cut out completely. Just static? I stared at the screen, frozen, every nerve screaming that something had followed me out of that tape. When the static cleared, I realized what I'd done. When the screen finally went dark, I just sat there. Minutes passed, maybe hours, before I realized the tape had stopped on its own. The VCR clicked, mechanical, almost like a sigh of relief. But there was no relief for me. I couldn't shake the image of Squidward's body sprawled across my living room. Even when I blinked, the afterimage burned behind my eyelids. That night, I didn't sleep. I couldn't. Every time I closed my eyes, I heard water rushing into my lungs, pulling me down, deeper and deeper. The dreams, if you can even call them that, felt too real. I'd jolt awake gasping, clawing at my chest, certain I was drowning in my own bed. And the laughter. That was the worst. At first, it was faint, easy to dismiss. A muffled giggle when the pipes rattled, or a bubbling sound from the fridge. But it grew sharper, clearer, until it was unmistakably SpongeBob's laugh warped, slowed, echoing. Always just out of reach, I thought. Maybe sharing it would make it less real. So I digitized the tape, frame by frame, determined to prove it wasn't just in my head. But the files, they never held. Corrupted within minutes of saving. Segments replaced with static audio glitching into guttural tones I couldn't even identify. Once, the entire hard drive. Fried as soon as I tried to play it back. I even posted about it, went digging through forums, old lost media threads, anywhere someone might know what I'd found. Most people laughed it off. Another red Mist Squidward clone, they said. Nice try. But then, hours after posting, my threads vanished. Not just Locterist, entire discussion scrubbed. I checked cached versions. Nothing. Like they'd never existed. The deeper I dug, the stranger it got. Mentions of similar tapes appeared in old archives, but every link redirected to empty pages. A handful of comments hinted at exemplies, at projects that went too far, at animation experiments shelved for reasons no one wanted to admit. But those comments never stayed up long. It felt deliberate, like someone or something was cleaning house. I've only managed to keep fragments, single frames I pulled before the files rotted. A shot of Squidward's trembling hands, Patrick's jaw stretched wider than should be possible. A single glitched caption that just read "Stay." But even those don't last. Every time I try to upload them, they vanish. My phone deletes them. My computer crashes. External drives fail. It's like the tape refuses to be copied. And yet the memory doesn't fade. If anything, it gets stronger. Every day since, I've noticed the bleed-through shadows stretching longer than they should, reflections in windows lingering just a little too long. Once, I swear I saw Squidward's sunken eyes staring back at me from the glass. I don't know if Nickelodeon buried it because they were ashamed, or because they were afraid. Maybe both. But I know one thing. They didn't bury it deep enough. So why am I telling you this? If you've made it this far, you need to understand something. This isn't just my problem anymore. The tape doesn't stay contained. It spreads, not through files, not through VHS, not even through recordings. It spreads through knowledge. Every word I've told you has pulled it closer to you. Think about it, why do you think every forum post disappears? Why do entire threads vanish overnight? It isn't just censorship. It's containment. The less you know, the safer you are. And yet, here you are, still listening, still curious. Do you hear it yet? The faint bubbling in the silence around you? The laugh that doesn't quite belong? Don't dismiss it. Always starts that way. I can't tell you exactly what happens next. It's different for everyone. Some hear voices in the static between songs. Some dream of drowning. Some swear they've seen Squidward's hollow eyes watching them from the dark corners of their own homes. Maybe you'll experience all of it. Maybe worse. That's why I'm asking you to share what happens. If you've seen anything, heard anything, post it below. Theories, fragments, even jokes. Don't let the silence take it. Talking about it might be the only way to fight back, or at least to warn the next person. But don't fool yourself. There's no escaping it, because once you've heard about it, it's only a matter of time before you see it too.